podcast, and today I gotta drive to work, so you know what? I thought I'd record. I have a really interesting topic to talk about today because recently we over the weekend that there was a 11-hour finals of a CDH tournament, and I kind of want to go over, why I think that that's a problem, what that shows about the competitive community, and CDH in general. Now, I want to preface by I'm not knocking CDH. I love EDH in all forms. I personally don't play CDH, but just like I personally don't play all the competitive formats as much as I would want, right? I don't get to play as much EDH as I want. And I think CDH is a nice in-between for people who want to play 60-card formats but don't have the time to invest into building the best deck or trying to figure out what the metagame is. CDH is a nice in-between of EDH. I get to play all the cool cards that I want. I get to do all of the silly shenanigans that I usually don't have access to because other formats are either too efficient or too fast. CDH is a really nice safe haven for a lot of people to do their silly, degenerate stuff, but in a 4-player, multiplayer environment where they don't have to worry about getting bullied as much as you do in 1v1. Not mentally or emotionally, but sometimes with the cards, the way that the draws are, the variance, you feel like the game is beating up on you a little bit more when you're playing competitive 60 card. So to start, I think that CDH overall is actually a good outlet because the most infuriating thing for playing a normal match of EDH is when your opponent just goes overboard and they're playing all the best cards, they're going super over the top. Their deck is obviously better than everybody else's at the table, and then it becomes an arch-enemy situation. It's not to say that person shouldn't be playing EDH. It's not to say that person shouldn't even be, trying to win. But, there needs to be I don't want to say house rules, but expectations have to be set about what is acceptable at tables, right? If you're trying to spend an hour with your friends because that's all the time that you have, right? That's totally fine. You need to make sure that you set aside time to do things that are important to you. And EDH is important to a lot of people. Now, CDH is that nice little offshoot where you want to win, and then you can play with a lot of people who have hyper-optimized decks just like you, and then the focus is less on, let's enjoy the time with my friends. It's still there, but that's less of the focus. The focus is mainly on, okay, I want to do this hyper-efficient thing. How do I do it well and consistent? With that in mind, with the fact that, CDH is the outlet for a lot of people to play their degenerate, and I use degenerate very loosely here, to play their degenerate deck, I feel like, there's two issues with CDH tournaments in general. The first is that you have a 4-person multiplayer game that you're trying to play as a 60-card competitive format. Really hard to get your players to have the 60-card mindset without having the 60-card bias, right? In 60 cards, it's almost never a good thing to draw, but it's also worse to lose. And so you have these people who understand how tournament rules work. You have these people who understand play patterns and the way that the prize structure breaks down, and they understand that if they feel like they're going to lose, if they can convince everybody to draw, because usually in 60 card competitive it's really difficult to draw with your opponent. You both have to have something that you want. You have to both have stakes that you're willing to fight over, and it's just hard to justify it a lot of times unless you are locked in for top 8 or you've already done exceptionally well in the tournament. It's very difficult to get people to agree to a draw in 60-card formats. Now, in competitive EDH, where all 4 players have the same mentality as a 60-card format, if one person introduces a draw and one person agrees, the other 2 people are highly incentivized because if they draw, they won't have a loss on their record to agree to that draw. Now, this is difficult for a couple of reasons. One, you have people who are trying to basically lawyer to the other 3 people about why it is that they should draw the game and not just play it out to its natural conclusion. And, there's going to be a natural back and forth there. There's going to be a debate. Some people feel like, oh, I'm going to be winning. Some people are going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to be losing. And so, you're going to have to convince people about why it's incentivized for both players to be trying to draw. Because usually, right, you don't want to draw. Usually you want to see who can actually win. And yet, the goal is not you don't want to lose. However, I think that that's a natural part of the game, and we shouldn't be as scared of having losses on our record. It's bad from a tournament standpoint, but it's good from a player's standpoint. You learn a lot from your losses. And so, imagine you work really hard. You get to the end of your tournament. You're in the finals against 3 other players. And, apparently there was a giant filibuster going on trying to figure out, okay, are we going to draw? How's this game going to end? And apparently one player just kept talking and talking and talking and buying time and talking and buying time and talking. And so I think that, the conversation is important to have. You need to have a healthy dialogue, especially in multiplayer games, just a part of the game that's super important. However, I think that, overall, being willing to just filibuster into oblivion, trying to just buy as much time as you possibly can, it's really not where you want to be. Because what we saw in the finals happens, which is that people are able to convince the other players to kind of just buy time, mentally wear down the people that you're playing with by asking to draw, asking for this, asking for that. And I think that, especially in a tournament setting, if this was a casual setting with nothing on the line, totally fine. Nothing wrong with an 11-hour game, right? Life happens, move on. Or, if that's just not what you want to do with your time, if you don't have, all these factors, are part of it. In a kitchen table game, if you want to play an 11-hour game, you can walk away from the table, grab a drink, you can chill out, go grab a smoke, whatever it is that's important to you. The issue comes when this is the finals of a tournament with money on the line, and nobody wants to lose. And so they play this 11-hour game, which, again, that's an issue of its own. In a tournament setting, there should be judges there. And I don't want to say let's have a chess clock, but there should be some kind of time limit total, like you have on mtgo. So, if you want to spend your time talking, just do it on somebody else's turn, where they have the chance to ignore you. If you are casting a spell, but before that spell resolves, you have something to say, and then you just have a whole 10, 12-minute conversation before the card resolves, that's an issue, right? We need to be willing to say, okay, judges, where's the slow play warnings? 11-hour games shouldn't happen if there's judges present. Judges should be seeing that, hey, yes, conversation is part of the game. Filibustering should not be part of the game. Verbally berating and bullying should not be part of the game, which is something that I heard happened in this game. Was the person who ultimately was trying to draw the game and succeeded in drawing the game had a flight. And so what they did was, instead of trying to just play the game to its natural conclusion, they would bully the other players. They would be rude, and I think that there has to be some level of respect for people's time, for people's decisions and decks. To play a game at the highest level takes an insane amount of energy, and to have played through multiple rounds, I think this was the 7th round of this tournament. To play through all those rounds, get to the finals, and want really hard just to be able to place, just to be able to finish the tournament and say that they did well. You have a certain amount of investment at that point, and you want to win. You want to play the game to its natural conclusion. So to see, the filibustering and all of the extra time wasting going on, it's really sad to see. And from the player's perspective, I'm sure it's very disheartening, because they just wanted to see, win or lose, who was going to get first, right? Instead, they had to, talk through a lot of lines that shouldn't have been talked. I don't want to say that in the multiplayer format you shouldn't have discussions. That's an important part of the game. What you shouldn't do is use the discussions to buy yourself time until inevitably you reach a point where, ooh, I gotta go catch my flight. Would you guys like to concede to me? Because that's scummy, right? If you're filibustering, if you're buying time to stall out the game so that nobody can win, and then at the end, the person who's stalling for time, because, whether they have to catch a flight or not, which is the story that they gave, they had to go catch a flight, so they were trying to buy time. But that doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to catch your flight, you should play the game faster, lose faster, go catch your flight, instead of filibustering for 11 hours, and then at the end of it saying, oh, I don't know what happened. I really, I think you guys should all concede to me. Because that's what happened, is the person who spent all the time filibustering at the end asked, could you guys just concede to me so I can go catch my flight? And the other people were like, no, why would we concede to you? So they all agreed to a draw. After 11 hours of playing Magic, in the finals, trying to get a good result, there was a draw. And that's despicable. I think that, I don't want to say they should all be, like, they should not be DQ'd, but, like, a draw shouldn't give you a point. It should count against you or be nothing, right? If you go to time, because I imagine the coverage crew had to watch this. The judges had to watch this. There were so many people who were involved with this that didn't want to be there for 11 hours, right? Good game of CDH might take 3. I could see that, right? You have a lot of good removal, a lot of good interaction. Yeah, I agree. Game with Highlander in the name should not reward draws. 1,000%. I think that, it's something to appease players. They don't want to be mean. They don't want to put them behind. But at the end of the day, what this is showing is that people who are toxic and willing to filibuster and talk to try to, like, buy themselves time to wear down their opponents mentally, that there's an incentive to do that. Because if you're able to just, like, nag on your opponents the entire game and then not really be in a winning spot but not being in a losing spot, and then you're able to, like, mentally convince everybody to draw because, oh, look, you'll get a point, you won't lose, but you also won't win. Like, it's really sad because, when I started playing Magic, I started with Commander, EDH at the time, and I really enjoyed the craziness, the brews, the wackiness, the fact that there was, like, almost no net. I don't think EDH rec existed back then. I had to gather or search the cards that I wanted. Like, I wanted to look at Jund creatures, so I'd look at Jund creatures. Okay, so Elias, real quick, super high level. I think that what happened was there was a CEDH competitive tournament, and in the finals of the CEDH tournament, there were 4 players that basically talked for a majority of the game about, like, draws and concessions and who should win and what should happen. They talked about, like, the prize structure and, like, breakdowns like that. Basically, they did what most 60-card players do in competitive formats. However, they did it in a 4-player finals of an EDH tournament. One player was filibustering for, like, way too long. Apparently, a cloud of fairies on the stack was where most of the game was spent. Most of the 11-hour game was one spell on the stack, not yet resolved, but they were just talking while the cloud of fairies was on the stack. And at the end of it, it was a draw. There was no winner. They spent 11 hours playing and talking and filibustering. And apparently this one player who was doing all the filibustering with the cloud of fairies on the stack decided at the end, after, berating people, like, apparently he was also being, like, really mean to one of the players, the Rondrak player. He was, like, not teasing them, berating them, and being rude and, like, kind of bullying them about what they were playing, how they were playing. And I think that, at the, you can tell people that they're playing wrong. You can have healthy banter, but you need to not be disrespectful, because then what I see it as is this person was filibustering and trying to berate their opponents to demean them and decrease their confidence so that then they would be more likely to concede to whatever they were saying, right? And in the end, the person who filibustered with the cloud of fairies in the stack, after 11 hours, asked the other players if they would like to concede to them because they had to go make their flight. And they were like, no, you were the one talking the whole time. I'm not going to concede to you. And then they all decided on a draw. So an 11-hour CEDH tournament with, I want to say, multiple hours of just talking and debating and filibustering ended in a draw. And all the players did well because when you draw in a CEDH tournament, you get points, which is insane. It should be the same as a 60-card format where you don't get any points. It's a 0-0. But that was my take on it. I wanted to come on and talk about this because I think that CDH is an important part of EDH. I don't personally play a lot of CDH, but I respect the fact that we all have a competitive mindset to a degree. And I know a lot of people who want to play EDH at the highest level, and it infuriates other people when they have to play against those decks. But it's important to have a refuge for those players. It's really important to have a place where people who are competitively minded but want to play a singleton 100 card format, singleton format with 4 friends, like three friends, a group of 4. I think that's an important thing to have in the community. It's important to have a group where people can go and play at the highest level and not be mad. Uh, yeah, yeah, exactly. The dude, literally filibustered all day. It sounds like half of a day, right? In order to just get an extra point from a draw. But it's actually insane. Just wanted to talk about it because this is like the point of having a Magic community. Is you're supposed to be able to talk about what you see and the things that are important to you. And I think that, you know, conversation and debate and discussion in a multiplayer format, very important. A huge part of the game. However, I think that filibustering and the fact that you get points from draws incentivizes these toxic people to bully their opponents and try to get them to mentally, you know, concede to them. Even if they're not going to really concede to them, they might be winning brownie points in the future. All of their future opponents might concede to them or might lose to them because they've exhausted so much mental energy listened to a crazy player. And so I feel like, you know, it's important for us all to discuss this and to say, hey, I don't think an 11-hour game of Magic is okay, right? Like, the judges have to call slow play. They have to be ready. They have to be aware and prepared to see stuff like this and say, okay, I understand you guys are discussing, but that Cloud of Fairies needs to resolve. You can talk during a game of EDH, but make sure that you're taking game actions and progressing the game. This has been my take on the 11-hour game. I really appreciate y'all watching. I hope you have a beautiful day. Till next time, peace.